Hello rally folk and welcome back to Maximum Attack Rallying. Bringing you this video on Sunday, the final Sunday of the 2020 World Rally Championship and the end of Rally Monza. I wanted to try and get something out today just as a little bit of a initial thought and review on what's happened over the last few days. I think it's safe to say that it's been dramatic, probably one of the more dramatic WRC finales that we've seen in recent memory, which, given the event that was before us, was perhaps a little bit of a surprise in a way. So if you've watched any of my videos before, firstly, where have you been? But secondly, you will know that I was a little bit of a Monza skeptic. I think it was very important to have the stages outside of the circuit, but I think for me, I had my doubts about whether Monza would make a fitting finale to the championship. I think the event itself has blown all of those concerns out of the water. The weather turned everything on its head, didn't it? I think if we'd had a dry Monza rally, I think we may have been looking at a very different event. We wouldn't have had that unpredictability of the conditions. We wouldn't have had the challenge of the ruts on the gravel sections of the stages in the circuits, and we wouldn't have had as much danger from the concrete blocks, and we wouldn't have had the jeopardy of the snow and ice on Saturday. So I think the weather was a real help, and I think it gave us probably one of the most dramatic, as I said, one of the most dramatic season closes we've seen for a long time, probably. So, unsurprisingly, perhaps, Sebastien, Ogier and Julien Ingrassia scooped their 7th world title, following Elfyn Evans' incident, shall we say, on Saturday, which I'm sure you've all seen. I think once that happened, it was a real long shot for Evans to win the title. It would have taken Ogier to make a mistake. And as we all know, Ogier does not make very many mistakes. It does happen on occasion, and it has happened in this rally. He did have a few slips and slides here and there. But I think once he had survived that stage and Evans had gone off, he knew exactly what he had to do, and he just went into Ogier mode. He controlled the pace, controlled the event, and did exactly what he needed to do. So it was a real big ask. In terms of Evans, well, as many others have said, as the other crews have said, it was just, it was so unfortunate, wasn't it? It was one of those moments, if you were watching it live, which I suspect many of you were, it was just a heartbreaker, wasn't it? That moment when you just saw the car slide, it was horrible. My heart, I try and be as impartial as I can, but my heart sunk because I did really want Evans to win the championship. I think he really deserved it this year because he has put on a fantastic performance. And despite what's happened this weekend, I really don't think we should forget that. I think this has been such a massive year for him and Scott Martin. They have just gone beyond any expectation. Their first year in the Toyota, again, with Ogier as a teammate, I don't think anyone was expecting them to come out of the blocks as hard as they did, but we saw it at the very start of the season in Monte Carlo. The pace was really there, and it's just been consistent, and they've just put in results and been there or thereabouts all season. So for it to end that way was a real disappointment. They were very, very unlucky. You could maybe make the argument that he was perhaps pushing a little bit harder than he needed to, but as he said, he felt confident in the car, he felt confident in the conditions. And I don't think you can be too hard on him for the off, because as we saw, Ogier nearly went off on the same corner, despite the fact that he was going slowly, because Evans, to his massive credit, had been there to try and slow down the cars behind him. As I said in some posts on social media during Saturday, it would have been so easy for Evans to get out of the car and just walk away. If that had been me, I would have just got out of the car and walked away. I would not have wanted to talk to anyone. But one of his first thoughts was the team, and you could see that in the interviews later in Saturday. It was as though he was as disappointed for the team as he was for himself. You know, his off arguably cost Toyota the Manufacturers' Championship. So, and you could see he was annoyed about that. He is such a professional and such a team player that mattered to him, and it mattered to him to get out of the car and make sure that his teammate and those that were behind him didn't fall victim to the conditions like he did. So, you know, huge credit to Evans. I think it was a massive performance this season and this weekend. You know, he was up to that point, he was doing exactly what he needed to do. So I think both him and Scott Martin can walk away from this year with their heads held high. They did a fantastic job, you know, and hopefully they can continue that performance into 2021, where, you know, if this year is anything to go by, they will be right there again, right there. So that was really, really great. Obviously, Ogier winning again. I mean, what can you say? As I said earlier in the video, as soon as Evans went off, it wasn't a done deal, but it was kind of a done deal, wasn't it? You know, he wasn't going to throw it away. He's not the type of driver that throws it off the road or takes unnecessary risk. And he did exactly what he needed to do, and he has cemented his place at the very top of the WRC tree. You know, I think he hasn't won as many titles as Loeb. He could win another next year, which would put him only one behind. But while he doesn't have that, he won't ever have that total number of championships. I think if you look at the way he's gone about it and his achievement to now be only the second driver other than Kankkunen to win in 3 different cars, you know, I think, you know, you can make the case that he is the best driver we've ever seen. And I don't think you could easily argue against that. You know, I think him and Loeb are, I would probably put them about even personally, but, you know, he is absolutely up there as one of the best drivers probably the world has ever seen, even outside of rallying. So a tremendous achievement, and he's, again, in the same way that Elfyn was extremely sportsmanlike, you know, Seb was just the same. You know, you could see the disappointment at the end of stage 11 when Evans gone off. You could see that he was disappointed that had happened to his teammate and his friend, and he wanted to win the right way. He wanted to win on times, and you know, he was gutted for his teammate, because, you know, they've formed a really great working relationship over the last few seasons. You know, when they were at Ford together and helped each other out, and you know, they're a great team. So I think Ogier's achievement and the way he's gone about things, particularly since the Volkswagen days, I think has endeared him to a lot of people. It's very easy when someone keeps winning and they're in the best car, as he was during the Volkswagen era, to kind of get a bit sick of it, as we did with Loeb, and as we, you know, people did with Michael Schumacher in Formula One. So, you know, a really great performance again. He's done what he does best. So that was great. And I think the rally itself, as I said, and the weather made the event, but even so, I think it was fascinating to see the cars in that environment over a longer period. We occasionally see little stages like that, but for so much of the rally to be that way was fascinating. I thought it was almost bizarre. I think there was a lot of people said there were echoes of the spectator stages, get my words out, of the RAC rally as it was 20 odd years ago, and I definitely got that feeling. You know, you got that sense, and that was a very interesting kind of arrangement. And then, you know, I think for a lot of us, a lot of rally people, if you're lucky enough to have competed, you know, I have done a single venue rally at a racetrack, and it was kind of odd to see the cars in that environment, in the environment that you or I may have competed in. So that was, you know, it was fascinating. As Julien Porter said on All Live, you know, it would be interesting to see more events like that in the calendar, and I think I would agree with that, because while I know a lot of the traditionalists and the purists will say that it's not proper rallying, well, yes, you can make that argument, but what it does is it brings rallying to people in a much more accessible way. You know, if we can hopefully get to a point next year where we've got fans again, if we could have one or two events like that on the calendar in between the proper rallies, you know, you've got really interesting tool there, because, you know, if Monza this weekend had crowds there, it would have been phenomenally good. So it's something to think about, I think, something to think about. A couple of other things I want to touch on. I think, as I tweeted a little while ago, one of the biggest stories for me was the stop-line interview with Esapekka Lappi, who had a good event, set some good times, really good tyre choice on Friday, but announced in his stop-line interview at the end of the rally that this is the end. He won't be back in the Ford next year, and is, you know, with Hyundai and Toyota confirmed, all but confirmed, it looks like game over, which is a bit of a shame for me, I think, and it was a big story, I think, from this weekend. You know, he did well. He started to show a little bit of that speed. You know, we can't forget that he won Rally Finland in 17. So that's a real strange situation for me to see him going. Of all the Ford drivers, he probably isn't the one that I would be making the change with. I think Suninen has probably had a more disappointing season for me in some ways. So, and has been in the car for much longer than Lappi. Don't forget, you know, it's Lappi's first year in the car. So that's a strange one. What that means for next year remains to be seen. We may see a Adrian Fourmeau in the third car, which I don't think would be a bad choice. I think he's shown a lot of speed this year in the various events that he's done, and showed a lot of speed this weekend. Obviously, it went wrong at the end, but and then you only have to look at some of the other drivers out there that don't have a seat. Principally, I would say Oliver Solberg and Andreas Mikkelsen, who were the fastest or top finishing R5 cars at Monza. Would they make a good replacement? Absolutely. I think the other thing I wanted to get onto is, you know, I think we ended up in another strange situation where you had WRC, the top 3 WRC3 cars finished ahead of the WRC2 cars, which again demonstrates how ridiculous the situation is with WRC2 and 3 and with the Rally 2 cars. The FIA and promoters' insistence on having those as separate classes continues to baffle. You know, especially when you watch the live coverage, that Solberg and Mikkelsen basically got zero coverage on all live, while Ostberg and Tiedemann in WRC2 kept getting coverage even though they were behind the others. It was bizarre. Really, really bizarre for me. And that's not, you know, Ostberg did really well, and Tiedemann's obviously done well this season, so, you know, congratulations to Ostberg for winning WRC2 and bringing on the C3 R5, but it's just a bizarre situation, a really bizarre situation, and I think I just can't comprehend why they insist on having the two Rally 2 classes separate from each other. Just put them all in together, for God's sake. It's just bizarre, or at least give them fair coverage on all live. You have to give, you know, Mikkelsen and Solberg and Huttunen, who won WRC3, you have to give them that coverage. Weirdly, you know, speaking of Ostberg, you could argue that he's another contender and is equally as deserving of that Ford seat. The other option, unfortunately, could be that we won't see M Sport next season. They may decide to have a sabbatical before the hybrid era. You know, they're going through very tough times. They're a very small business compared to, obviously, the might of the Toyota and Hyundai teams, so there's that option. Or it may be the end. Maybe they won't even do a hybrid car. Who knows? You know, Malcolm Wilson and Rich Milner, they have to protect the business first and foremost. So it would be easy for them, I think, to justify only focusing on customer programs with Rally 2, 3, 4 and 5 cars. I wouldn't blame them. So yes, anyway, that's enough of that. I won't get too much into that. We'll see how that unfolds in the weeks ahead before Monte Carlo. Should that happen, hopefully it will. And yes, some quick thoughts at least on Monza, and perhaps a little bit more as the dust settles in the days ahead. But thanks again for watching. If you're on Instagram, YouTube, FaceTube, wherever you're watching this, please like and subscribe as always, and I will catch you again very soon.